a stormy, rainy night, my girlfriend Sarah and I decided to seek shelter in a remote, forgotten cabin nestled deep within the woods. The rain poured relentlessly, creating a curtain of water that obscured our view of the narrow, winding road. Little did we know that our quest for refuge would lead us into a nightmarish tale of terror. As we navigated through the downpour, the headlights of our car illuminated the thick forest that seemed to close in around us, casting long, eerie shadows on the road. Our excitement soon gave way to unease, the isolation of the woods magnified by the relentless storm. Suddenly, the car's engine sputtered and died, leaving us stranded in the darkness. Panic gripped us as we desperately tried to restart the car, but it remained unresponsive. We were marooned in the midst of the tempest, with no choice but to find shelter on this eerie, rainy night. With our cell phones offering no signal, we spotted a faint light in the distance. A cabin, isolated and weathered, standing as our only refuge from the downpour. We embarked on a treacherous journey through the rain-soaked woods, our clothes and shoes soaked through with each step. The cabin appeared as a haunting silhouette in the relentless rain, its windows shattered and its wooden walls aged by years of neglect. It felt as though it had been abandoned for generations, an ominous presence in the heart of the forest. Cautiously, we entered, the creaking door echoing in the empty space. The interior was cold and damp, the air thick with the scent of decay. It was as if the very walls of the cabin held dark secrets, whispering their tales of despair. As we explored further, we discovered a room shrouded in darkness, with a single candle flickering atop a dusty, long-forgotten piano. Sarah, ever the brave one, approached the instrument and hesitantly played a key. The sound resonated through the room, sending shivers down our spines. The candle's flame danced wildly, casting eerie, shifting shadows on the walls. It was as if the cabin itself responded to the music. In that moment, we heard a mournful, ghostly melody, a chilling tune that seemed to emanate from the very walls of the cabin. Sarah continued to play, her fingers guided by an unseen force, the music growing more haunting and melancholic with each passing note. As the melody filled the room, a spectral figure emerged from the shadows, its ethereal form gliding towards us. It was a ghostly presence, draped in tattered garments, its face veiled by darkness. It moved closer, its movements graceful and eerie. Terrified, we tried to flee, but the door slammed shut, trapping us with the ghostly apparition. The room grew colder, and the music intensified, becoming a cacophony of wails and sorrow. The ghostly figure reached out, its icy fingers brushing against our skin. It whispered words of anguish and torment. We could feel the weight of its despair pressing down upon us. In our desperation, we called out for help, our voices barely audible above the spectral symphony that enveloped us. Just when it seemed that all hope was lost, the music ceased, and the oppressive presence lifted. The cabin's door swung open, and we rushed out into the storm, soaked and shaken. Our car miraculously started, and we sped away from the haunted cabin, never looking back. To this day, we cannot explain the horrors we encountered on that rainy night, whether it was the spirit of a tormented musician or a manifestation of our deepest fears. But the memory of that night will forever haunt us, a chilling reminder that the most innocent of journeys can turn into a terrifying ordeal when the supernatural is involved. The relentless rain drummed against the windows like ghostly fingers, setting an ominous tone for the night ahead. Inside the cozy cottage, I sat by the crackling fire, seeking refuge from the tempestuous storm that raged outside. Little did I know, the true horrors of the night were yet to reveal themselves. As the hours passed, the power flickered and died, leaving me in near darkness, save for the feeble glow of the fire. I fumbled for a flashlight and cautiously ventured into the pitch-black house to find some candles. The creaking floorboards and eerie silence heightened my unease, as if the very house itself harbored secrets. With candle in hand, I returned to the living room and set it on the coffee table. Shadows danced along the walls, casting grotesque shapes that seemed to come alive. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that unseen eyes were fixed upon me from the darkness. Just as I was about to dismiss my paranoia as a product of my overactive imagination, I heard it, a faint, agonized whisper that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. It was a voice filled with torment, pleading for release from some unspeakable suffering. My heart pounded as I tried to locate the source of the voice. It led me to the cellar door, which stood ajar, inviting me into its abyss. Against my better judgment, I descended into the darkness, the weak candlelight barely illuminating the damp, cold space below. In the cellar, I discovered an old, dusty journal, its pages filled with cryptic writings and disturbing drawings. It chronicled the tragic tale of a family that had once lived in the cottage. They had been driven to madness by an insidious presence, trapped in a never-ending nightmare of despair. As I read the journal, the voice grew louder, more desperate, echoing through the narrow stone passageways. I could feel the presence drawing closer, an oppressive weight that threatened to suffocate me. Then, with a sudden bone-chilling jolt, the candles flickered and extinguished. In the absolute darkness, I felt a frigid hand close around my wrist, pulling me deeper into the cellar. I screamed, struggling to break free, but the grip only tightened. As I was dragged further into the abyss, I glimpsed the apparitions of the tormented family, their ghostly faces contorted in agony. They whispered of a malevolent force that had imprisoned them for eternity, and they sought my help to break the curse that bound them. With every ounce of strength, I managed to break free from the icy grip and scramble up the cellar stairs. I slammed the door shut behind me and bolted it, but the voices persisted, their wails and pleas echoing in my mind. As the storm raged on outside, I realized I was not alone in that cottage. I had unwittingly become entangled in a nightmare that had plagued generations before me, a curse that sought to claim my soul. And as I huddled in the darkness, the voices of the tormented echoed in my ears, a haunting reminder that some horrors are born of the past and can never truly be escaped. Terrified and desperate to find a way to end the curse, I began scouring the journal for clues. The writings detailed a ritual, a dangerous and forbidden incantation that, if performed correctly, could potentially break the malevolent force's hold on the cottage. The instructions were cryptic and filled with warnings of the dire consequences of failure. But with the voices of the tormented family still echoing in my mind, I felt compelled to try. I gathered the necessary items, including candles, salt, and a dagger, and prepared to perform the ritual in the very cellar where the curse had originated. As I chanted the incantation, the air grew thick with an oppressive energy. The temperature plummeted, and I could feel the presence drawing near, its anger palpable. Shadows swirled around me, and the very walls of the cellar seemed to pulse with a sinister force. Just as I feared I had made a terrible mistake, there was a blinding flash of light, and a deafening roar filled the room. The walls trembled and the ground shook beneath my feet. It was as if the very foundation of the cottage was rebelling against the ritual. But then, as suddenly as it had begun, it all stopped. The storm outside subsided, and the oppressive presence that had haunted the cottage for generations lifted. I was left standing in the now calm cellar, trembling and exhausted, but alive. As the first rays of dawn broke through the clouds, I realized that I had succeeded in breaking the curse. The tormented spirits of the family that had once lived here were finally at rest, their voices silenced forever. The cottage, once a place of despair, was now free from the malevolent force that had held it in its grip. I left the cottage that morning, the rain having finally stopped, with a sense of relief and closure. I knew that I had ventured into the heart of darkness on that rainy night,